Gonna get started. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Pete Berube. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. With us, I see is Craig Schultz, Joyce Boyardi, Kathy McGinnis, Jim Borgman, and Doug Riley. And for Finance Committee members, just a quick announcement. Sean has opted to part from the committee. I've acknowledged his resignation. I don't think that's anything that I have to accept or not accept. I'm not happy about it, but it's unfortunate, and I wish him the best. And so I just wanted everybody to know that. So we're down to 8 members. If anybody knows of somebody that's interested, please send them to the town moderator. They certainly can ask questions of us if they're looking for any of us, if they're looking for some insight as to what it entails. And with that said, a couple of things just to get started from me. I want you to know that I'm looking at assigning articles sooner than later. And the reason for that is because I want people to focus on specifically focusing on those that they may get assigned the first time around versus having to kind of go back. We're not going to do it tonight, but I would say at the latest to be next week. We only have 2 really board or 2 department updates tonight, is Board of Health and DPW, which obviously is significant and everybody should be absolutely tuned in to those anyway. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McVeigh for a Board of Health update. The floor is yours, Jim.
Hello,
John,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, this is John McVeigh. Good evening. Thank you, Chair Berube. My understanding is that the topic tonight was for the host community agreement impact funds. Is that what the main topic for tonight was, or was it on the budget in general?
We were expecting your budget in general. So if please do your best to cover that, but lacking that, we certainly can get you back. We do have, we've scheduled all of the budget presentations. We do have some time to go back. So I don't want to put you on the spot. If you're not prepared to cover your budget request. Okay.
Yeah, for our budget really hasn't changed from the operation standpoint from last year, except for contractual agreements, salary-wise. I think the only increase we had was in office supplies, and that was due to doing a computer cloud-based fax line, which was entailing a $30 a month fee. But other than that, we've been pretty level funded and level functioning, depending how you look at it. The request I know that some people had looked at tonight with the host community agreement, which is for $4,000, and that had to do with youth vaping, in particular linked to cannabis use. So we're hoping to utilize those funds to get consultants or experts in the field of behavioral health or substance abuse health in the youth arena to maybe speak at the school or do studies regarding vaping and marijuana use to get at least not only a baseline on what the impact is at the school level, middle school, high school, but also do some teaching outreach work. So that money would be great to have going towards that directive. Let me think if there's anything else I'm missing here. We've got revolving accounts, which we've had for many years. Revolving account for vaccines, food inspections, I think rabies clinic, and I think we've had grants in the grant scale. We've had the emergency management Region 4A and 4B grants that we've been getting. Those have been, we've gotten those in increments because of the pandemic, much more than we have in the past. I think the total from the Region 4A and 4B has been close to $6,000-7,000 that we've gotten from them. The federal grants that were coming into the towns from the CARES Act are much more extensive grants for the entire town. And those are being utilized by us as well for supplemental nursing services. And let's see if there's anything else that we have here that I haven't gone over. Anyone have any questions for me? Again, with the budget, pretty much is self-explanatory. It really hasn't gone up to any degree, as I mentioned before. But I'm sure there may be some specific questions that the Finance Committee may have for Board of Health.
Yep, John, I'll jump in. I see your HCA request for $4,000. That strikes me as something that is right up the alley for the intent of the HCA funding. There's not much detail here, but I'm not looking to certainly micromanage. If you say you need $4,000 and it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I think that's probably appropriate. And then I'll defer to others if they have specific questions. I actually do have some questions on the CARE funding. It's kind of been something of interest to me in the sense that, excuse me, in February, I asked the question of some of the town administrator and town finances, how is Millis doing on executing its CARES funding? And we were, in my opinion, a little slow to execute some of those things. I'm curious how you think you're doing on your, if you had CARES requests, specific projects that were requested last year. I think we were lucky to get an extension of those until the end of this calendar year. Can you give me a little insight into how you're doing and what some of those funding requests were?
Current requests, for the past requests, I'll start off on that first. We're mostly PPE related regarding the pandemic, just equipment and supplies at that level from the Board of Health end. I know from the town end, there was more extensive use, and perhaps from the school, fire department, and other departments involved, but specifically from the Board of Health end, it was PPE, protective equipment, that we had requested. We're, again, a small department. There's full-time myself, part-time clerk, and a 10-hour-a-week nurse. So, we don't have, we're not staff heavy in that regard. So our requirements are, basically to make sure that our staff are covered with the PPE, as well as, for clinics, the equipment that might be needed for large-scale clinics, which unfortunately, because of the resolution from the governor's office, the mandate, I should say, that diverted vaccine away, it's that realization has kind of passed. It might, be reversed in the near future, but we have a lot of equipment, PPE equipment and immunization equipment in the ready in case the clinics are needed. But from the answer to your question, the PPE is the main expense from the Board of Health under the CARES. As well, if I should add the current, we're looking to supplement our nursing services through the CARES Act. And that was ideally supposed to happen with projected clinics that would run all the way into December of 2021.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I would encourage you that if you have other needs that weren't identified last summer, that you would put them together and send them forward, because I just predict that a lot of those funds that were initially identified could go unexecuted. Could be money still available, not to mention the fact that we're about to see another infusion of resources from the federal government. Who knows if we're going to see it, but I wouldn't, if you have other things that are outstanding or needs to be met, I wouldn't be shy about voicing those, especially since it's not coming directly from our general fund. Okay, with that, I'm gonna turn it over to other members of the board if they have any questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you on the HCA. I think that HCA funds, I think that $4,000 is exactly the intent, and it's not adding a position, so it's not something we'll be saddled with after the HCA money goes away, if it goes away in 5 years. I think that's the exact intent for it. I think it's and we do have a select board member here, so I'd like to, and they get to recommend on it. I'd like to say I think that is the quintessential perfect use scenario. It's not a long-term commitment, and it's got a direct nexus to what the money was intended to be used for. So.
Okay, others? Go ahead, Doug.
Just curious, I agree with what Craig said. I was just wondering to what extent there's some coordination between the Board of Health, the school department, and for example, the seniors, that all three are going to be looking for or are asking for funds for education and counseling and what have you, just so that, you know, we're not duplicating things and budgeting money essentially twice, unless those are all going to be used for completely different things.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. We did cooperate, or we did communicate, I should say, with the schools before the pandemic regarding the vaping. We were on the cusp of having, this exact type of use of the monies being, being used for the consultant purposes, as well as for campaigns regarding education and substance abuse, as well as behavioral health. But yes, we communicate very readily with the schools, the school nurses, and the staff that are involved with youth behavior. So my hope is that we won't be redundant on our services. We're going to try as best as possible not to be overlap in that direction. So yeah, to answer your question, we have been in communication, and we will continue to be in communication regarding the vaping, as well as the vaping and cannabis connection in that direction.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. McVeigh, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. Anything, I'll let you have the last word of your time. And not necessary. So thank you very much, John. And if we have follow-up questions or anything, we'll have Deirdre send them out in writing.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. A couple of administrative items. I can only see 4 of you at a time, so waving to me, sometimes you get lucky if you're up on my screen. Otherwise, please chirp or just call out, and I'll acknowledge. Verbally is better than visually. And then I am remiss. I welcome Mr. Select Board person, Mr. Germain, for joining us. The request went out last week, and I heard it discussed Monday night at the Select Board meeting. They're going to do basically a rotational schedule between the 3 Select Board members. So thank you, Mr. Germain. Please pass thanks to your colleagues, and we appreciate you checking in.
Pleasure. It's great to be back with the whole team.
Well, we do have an opening, but I think you're encumbered. Okay, moving on. Mr. McKay, your budget discussion, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. I know that Deirdre sent out the packet. I don't intend on going through every line of all 60+ pages. And I apologize to Mr. Jermaine and Carol, they have to sit here and listen to it all over again. They just heard it all Monday night. So what we're gonna do is, I think what I'd like to do is highlight, I sent out a memo that, highlighting the needs of the department. And then we can go through with a brief explanation of the rest of the paper. And you let me know if you want to question as we go, but I think I will highlight almost all the,
I'll let you know, Jim.
yes,
Jim, I'll let you know right now. We'll question as we go, as you kind of hit each highlight or each main subject, because I know you have a long presentation. I'll do exactly as the select board did. We'll pause at each kind of major section and ask questions.
sure, great. So I'm going to read off the highlight. So the department is requesting 2 above level service appointments. The budget and procurement manager, under the supervision of the director of public works, will oversee the administrative activities of the department and supports complex and multi-departmental budgeting. Responsibilities for the procurement of goods and services that supports all DPW activities. The position is a key part of the management team and will participate in management meetings and decision-making, performs professional work in analyzing budgetary data and requests and reports. That's something that's been missing for quite a while in the department. And I think if we all know that if many people watch when I go to the select board, there's many presentations of hiring outside firms that we think that this person in this position can do in-house. Mainly the billing of the, overseeing the billing and actually doing, adding new billing procedures for the stormwater management. Each year we pay Kleinfelder to assist with measuring all the new properties. We believe that, with the new software that we're looking at, we actually have a proposal tomorrow that we're going to be looking at in software, that same stuff that Kleinfelder uses, but, we'll be able to, pay for the software, and in the in-house person will be able to do that billing. I'll show you further when we get into the part of that, of how much each department will pay for this position and the savings from outside engineering firms that will also save for this position. And in doing that, we'll have to increase the department assistant 1 that works in the department to take over a lot of the responsibilities because we believe that we can do it in-house. I'm not, it will be posted, it's a union position, but we think that we have the person that can handle this position that's already doing the job on a daily basis now. So we will increase the hour of the department assistant 1 from 12 hours to 19 hours. That will keep that position under a benefited position, so it won't be over 20 hours, so there won't be health insurance or anything else associated with that. And then also we are requesting that a HEO laborer under the supervision of the department superintendent, the laborer will assist with the general fund duties, maintaining parks, roads, and assisting at the cemetery. With this new position, this is the most important line. With this new position, it will relieve the need of staff assigned to enterprise funds of maintaining general fund duties. With the acceptance of the Hickory Hill subdivision, which it will be on the ballot for road acceptance in this May at this year's town meeting, the position will also assist with overseeing maintenance required for snow plowing, road repair, and general needs for the public. Where did we get this? The need for these positions came directly from a select board study of the Department of Public Works, which was dated March 2020. The study was performed at Community Paragon Associates, LLC. I think most of you remember that, that the company that came in and did that service for the town, they hired the town, well, they assisted with the screening of the town administrator. They did the clerk's office, they did a survey for that. Kathy must remember them as she worked with them under the, when she was a select board member. And if anybody needs a copy of that, I can certainly send it out. I mean, I'm not sure if it's online. I think it is, but we can send that out. I mean, it's very lengthy. It was a great study. And we've already implemented many findings from that study. We did that last year when we upgraded and made new positions with more responsibilities for the superintendent of the DPW and water sewer superintendent and the facilities manager. It takes a little time for those people to, get acclimated and take over more responsibilities, but they're in that process now and taking care of many aspects of the daily running of the Department of Public Works. I don't know if you want to go down to in the packet, I gave you a Form 6 for the budget and procurement manager. That doesn't mean that title is going to be that. We can talk about whatever. It could just be the office manager for the DPW. I gave you a Form 6 for that. And it basically explains, it also gives the breakdown of the additional hours for that position of the department assistant going from 1 to 3. I gave what did I give? What else? We gave a job description. The job description is also in there of what would be expected of the new position for the budget and procurement manager. And most importantly, at the, if you can keep scrolling down, we'll come back up to that other one if we can keep going down, because this is the nuts and bolts of it. So when she gets to the page. So this is the job description for the budget and procurement manager. And the next page is, if we can scroll a little more down. So this is good. If we can hold it right there for a minute. So this is where this was presented last year to the town administrator, and at that time it was decided that right now that position, not that it wasn't wanted, it would just the funding for it and new positions going into a season that we weren't sure what was going to happen with the town. We decided to hold off in for this fiscal year. These numbers have changed because it's almost the exact same positions. I'm sorry, the GL numbers, they're different because they've been changed. How will we fund these positions? If you look, $4,000 would come out of the general fund engineering services. 2,000 would go to the department assistant, 4,000 to the procurement manager. Engineering services for sewer would be 5 and 2. Services engineering for water is 5,000 and 2,000. And engineering service and stormwater, the biggest, is 8 and 2. So a total of 22,000. That's already, these funds are already in the budget, so we're not requesting for additional funds for this. And as we can see in the next, it says, so the DPW overtime savings would be DPW overtime budget. That's usually around 5,000 to 6,000, each year. GCG Associates, they always do a yearly paving contract, $4,900, and we would be able to remove that, and we could do that in-house. The Kleinfelder task, because most of this is on for the support and abatement, appeal, and credit process, and also billing. FY19, we spent $10,000 the first year of the project, and we had no appeals at that time. The second year, we went up to $15,000. In FY21, it was 16, and that 16,000 for already this year, it's upwards of $18,000. Tie-in bond, we do a yearly rate study for the water and sewer position, for the water and sewer rates and stormwater for $5,000. And we believe that can be done in-house. That definitely could be done in-house. So that's the.
All right, Jim, can I interject?
Sure.
I think now's a good time. And I've got a couple questions, and I know Joyce has one as well.
Yep.
So real quickly, it sounds so you mentioned it. It sounds to me like an internal hire, potentially. And so if you're not able to do an internal hire, what is the impact to your numbers?
We would still probably go out and we'd hire somebody with the less hours. We would still, we'd still fill the position with the funds that we have, and it would turn into, a part-time position, with maybe something with 19 to 20 hours. to fulfill all those obligations that we asked for.
I didn't see, I'll ask later, but I didn't see Mike Kaczynski on the roster of attendees tonight, so
He's
I'll
coming.
save my next question. Okay.
I have a question about that too. I'm sorry if I'm missing it. Is this once you eliminate the
Hold
consultant-
on, Craig, hold on, I'm not done.
Okay.
So GCG, how does hiring a budget and procurement manager enable you to remove $4,900 from paving contract?
So
Or are you
that-
doing that in order to fund it?
No, so what we do each year, they put out the bid for the paving for Chapter 90 funding.
So they do the administrative
Correct.
procurement and contracting work.
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Craig, I'll come back to you, but Joyce said, kind of messaged me on the side. Joyce, go ahead.
Well, no, I just was wondering who was actually doing the who's been doing the job prior to this, the managerial, and why now is there a need for someone to step into that role?
So with the new stormwater management part, that's been in here for 3 years. That was created 3 years ago, and most of the billing aspect and the hearing process and everything else that is done through the engineering service, through engineering pay. We pay them to do all that. Kleinfelder.
So it's basically taking the money from them and giving it to somebody who is in-house.
We're taking the funds as I outlined, yes. That's $16,000. It's already in there.
Right.
We pay them through the engineering service line item from
Okay.
stormwater.
So you feel you have better control over it that way?
I definitely think that, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Schultz, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, so Jim, is it simple enough to say that if you get these 2 new positions, you'll eliminate the consulting fees and there'll be no significant net impact on the bottom line of the department? It's just the line items?
That's correct.
Then I believe it's a selectman call, basically. If it doesn't impact personnel issues, if they were good with the issue, the net bottom line of the department is a means and method kind of thing to me. Whatever the best means and method for the town, in this opinion of the DPW director, the select board, and the town manager. If it doesn't have a financial impact, my personal view is, I'm talking total financial impact, I'm talking benefits and everything else, and personnel issues or all that other stuff. But if they feel it's beneficial and there's no net impact on the bottom line, I believe that's within the scope of the budget, the way I view it. And it's a means and method question, whether internal or external sources is the best way to go. That's what to be clear, that didn't change. You're not going to have both the consulting fees and these positions, so
That's
it'll be
correct.
one or the other.
I mean, the first year, there may be some training aspects that we would still, and that's why every year we push it off. It's just, we're going to continue to pay these engineering fees and
Well, if we can quantify the training and get that
Yeah,
included in the
right.
budget, so we get a fair representation of what the hire would be.
Mhm.
I don't think it makes a significant difference to the bottom line, assuming no impact on personnel issues and other things along those lines.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, Kathy McInnes.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I'd just like to inform the board that, as Chair McCaffrey said on Monday night, when the stormwater enterprise was instituted, it was stated while there were discussions with the town that these exact requirements from a procurement officer was what was needed. And the selectmen at the time thought that it would be important to include that to tell the stormwater committee. So it's all falling into place as far as I'm concerned about this position. Thank you.
Okay. Just one follow-up from me, Mr. McKay, and that is, you mentioned some software that you'd be obtaining. Is the annual fee for that software included in your budget estimate?
It is not, because we're meeting, Carol, myself, and Terry Gonzalez from the assessor's office are meeting tomorrow. We had a brief explanation of it. We know it's around, I can give you a ballpark, it's around $8,000 to almost $10,000.
Yes, 10,000.
Yep.
Per year.
Just per year. Okay, well, that's not insignificant, and so please include it.
I would.
I use some expensive software where I work, and you forget to include a year of that, and you're it's not a good situation.
So on the subject too, I mean, the only thing that we would be is a new position, and that is for the highway person. So the study, when the study was done by Community Paragon, I think it's Paragon Associates, they came up with that the DPW was four full-time employees short on the general fund aspect. And the general fund aspect is working on parks, the cemetery. It is roads still, I mean, because we still have to maintain the roads under the general fund. We're not talking about catch basins because that's still billed out of the stormwater fund. But they found that there was 4 people short for the workload that is being to put towards the enterprise funds of water and sewer. Again, we're pretty close to getting a final report on that. And I believe that should be, I can't speak for the town administrator, but you may want to address that with him. We are meeting with, it was a free, they gave us as part of this program, they would come back and look at hours spent, and we did a lot of work on, we tracked, because we don't have a computer system to do the tracking, but we do now. We have a work order system that's in place. That we will, it actually tracked everybody, what they were doing per hourly and what job they were working on. And we broke it down into water, sewer, general, and stormwater. And that report should be coming. So instead of coming back and asking for 4 full-time employees, and even, the recommendation in the project says that we should look at, quickly looking at hiring 2 people. I think that a fair assessment at this time it is 1 full-time person. I think if we look at all the other major departments, they were, that it was known of this build out what Millis was, and they've already got their, people to fill out their departments. We are looking at Hickory Hill subdivision, and he's been putting it on, and he says he's going to put it on this May. He has a placeholder on there, but I can't wait and not plan. And I know no one likes to go in November to hire a full-time, open up the budget to hire a full-time person. And what does that mean? I mean, all that will be taken over by the town, the roads, the sidewalks. So that means we'll have to plow it, we'll have to sand it, salt it, and we would have to hire an outside contractor. And we did a brief semi, on a winter like this year. We're talking about, and it was a very light winter. And we feel that just to maintain that development alone with, and we're just talking snow and ice, is $14,075. That's equipment, a personnel, a town person, and the materials that we would use for that sidewalk, for the streets to be salted and sanded. So that would assist us with that. If not, if we don't hire this person, we'll just go out and we'll have to hire another contractor or 2 to take over that subdivision. So that's a plus, with hiring the full-time DPW worker. And I gave the breakdown of that, the cost of it. I can briefly tell you what we know what the cost would be: $52,000, $51,160 for the person's salary, and $19,000 and that's the highest family plan coverage that the town would have to share with the employee if they need it, and $850 for clothing allowance. So if you want to move on to the general fund highlights.
Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I was muted.
No.
Rookie mistake. Any questions on heavy equipment operator from the committee? Comments,
Yeah, I'll wait.
questions?
I'm going to hold comments on all positions, I think, until I find out what the select board is finally recommending, because I know they've talked about library, council on aging, DPW. I want to see what comes in. And for you, Peter, I'll mention this one too, not just for you, but the technology director or position. So there's a lot of positions coming in, and I want to see what the whole list is and how the whole list looks before I start. Because I think every one of them is probably justified by the department that needs it. I just don't know which ones are at the top of the pile at this moment.
Okay.
Okay.
And any others? Jim, quickly.
Yes.
So I am on, in terms of your document, your budget document, I've just gone through the job description for the heavy equipment operator. And now I'm on a page that's titled DPW Highway Division FY21 Budget Reductions. Is that
Okay.
where you plan to speak to next?
I'm going to speak to these next two, yes. And I'll
Okay,
just read
thank you.
my paper. If Deirdre, if you want to stay on that, that's fine, because we don't have to go to the, so we're looking for a restoration of FY21 expenses. And the reason for that is in FY18, the general fund expenses line item was reduced by $29,273. $9,400 was from tipping fees at the transfer station. $29,273 came from street lighting repairs. And then again in FY21, the general fund line item expenses were again reduced by $35,400. And this document here shows the reductions of where that $35,400 was reduced. I mean, I understand that it was needed to do that. I don't know of any other department, and again, I'm just speaking from what I know, that had a reduction in their expense line items. Some of them, 10,000 came from tree care, 5,000 came from road maintenance, the gasoline, $3,900. And the big thing is in the street lighting. If that budget now is running, and I think that a lot of these, the general fund line budget and the street lighting budget, snow and ice, I think you're going to see a lot of it not in deficit this year. Well, I can't say that. It's going to be something that's going to have to be really looked at in the upcoming months, because we're very close to exceeding a lot of line items because of these reductions. So it's a request that we at least, add back in the $35,400. The select board Monday night had a long discussion on adding more money into the tree budget. And so I just like, if I could just go to the next thing, and then we can talk about the general fund. And that being, this is the third time I've requested an increase of Form 6. And that number there, if you read, it says supplies road maintenance FY21. Both of these should be changed from 21 to 22. So I do apologize. It's just, I changed everything from last year to this. I'd like to increase the road maintenance budget from 20,000 and add 50,000 this year, and see how we are next year, and see incrementally if we could each year add more money to the road budget. And this would assist with the Chapter 90 funding that we get. We know that we're getting 272,000 something this year. That's right on line for 10 years. We'll get the same 272,000 for the next year. We can't spend it yet until the governor signs it. And he usually doesn't sign that until late June or the beginning of July. What would $50,000 do for a road maintenance budget? I think if anybody would take a ride down Farm Street and they see that little section that we did last year, and that came in right about $50,000. So we're talking about milling between 500 to 800 feet and putting an inch and a half of top coat asphalt on a road. Right now, we're looking at the two sections on Main Street for this $50,000. if you know, if from Plain Street to right past the police station where the school project came out in Park Road. And then after that, there's another section between Exchange Street and Park Road that needs to be done. I would use that $50,000 for, right away for this year. And what I asked for, what I said to the selectmen were that this would be approved by them when I come in for a budget. So this wouldn't just be hanging in there in a budget. We would use the $50,000 to pave something. And, they approve whatever road projects are done. I have my presentation ready for the Chapter 90 funding, this year. And I would present this 50,000 on which road, so they know, and the public knows, the $50,000 isn't going out to buy a lawnmower. It's not going out to buy anything, weed whackers or anything else like that. Could we use 100, 200, 300? Yes, we could, but I think that I'm just trying to be responsible and ask for something that is more feasible, or instead of asking for a large amount and then, just not getting nothing to try to help. We could use this for crack sealing, chip sealing, so on and so on. So I can answer questions about those two items if you'd like.
I'd like you to, yep. So do you have specific projects in mind if you were to receive 50,000?
I do. So right this year, I would use it to pave the two sections that I just said on Main Street, from Plain Street to past the police station to almost to Park Road, and then from Park Road on the opposite side of it to almost to Exchange Street.
Okay.
That would take up the 50,000.
Okay. And thus far, my observation is that many materials in my business or industry, prices have gone through the roof since last year. I suspect 50K won't get you as far as it did last year with paving with asphalt. So is 50K the right number to do those two projects?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question, make a comment.
Yeah.
Okay. First off, I'm absolutely think you're on the right track with road repair. I just am hesitant to put it into the budget. I'd rather see it as warrant articles, because then should it be a year where we just don't have the money, we don't go back in and reduce the budget by $50,000. And having done this for a few years, I've seen different departments where we've put things in their budgets for a specific project. Over 10 or 12 years, all of a sudden that becomes the general operating fund and the project isn't being done. That happened with some other items. So I would rather see it be a warrant article. And I think it falls into the category of must fund warrant article, to be honest. It's one of those that is as critical as anything else, or more critical than most. I think it falls right up there with the school bus lease that we have to do and the other items that we have to do each year. But by putting it in the budget, I'm afraid that in 5, 10, 15 years, that 50,000, 60, 70, 80,000 does become, and long after you're gone, Jim, possibly, becomes a new truck, becomes new staff, becomes something else. It doesn't remain roads. And everybody in this committee who's retired, moved out of town and stopped, and I promise you in 15 years, I'm gone. So but it'll just become another line item in the budget. I won't be gone from Millis, I'll be gone from this committee, but it'll be, I hope, but it'll be another line item in the budget, and it's not controllable. I like the flexibility of a warrant article, and that doesn't diminish it in importance in my mind at all. In fact, I think it gives the ability for the select board, the finance committee, and town meeting to actually see it every year that we're spending 50 or 100. And I think this year, Jim, we actually have the ability to spend more than $50,000 if we watch our departmental growths in other areas. We're doing those forecast sheets that it looks like there might be additional money that can be devoted to it. And that lets us go higher in years when we have the money, less in years when we don't, and we don't get tied in to the budgeted amount being perpetually in the budget. But it's not to say that I don't absolutely support that and the tree. And I feel the same way about the tree work that needs to be done. I think some years, if it's not in the budget, I think it's a perfect warrant article for spending when you have it and not spending when you don't, instead of having to go back in and cut the DPW budget on years that are tight because we can't afford it or whatnot, or cut other budgets.
We are running long, so Jim, unless
I need
anybody
to
has
comment
anything.
on, I
Go
need to
ahead, go
comment
ahead.
on that.
Yep, go ahead, Kathy.
If something is a line item that says for something, it appears like Craig said that it can be taken and used for something else. I thought when it was a line item that that's what you use it for.
No,
So,
it can only be in the DPW.
If I may, I think it's between personnel and expenses. You can't go between personnel and expenses, but if you keep it in the expense line, it can be, there is some flexibility there.
And also the select board can move it from any public safety line to any public safety line in the last 3 months of the year, regardless of its salary or expenses or anything else. So that's
okay,
why
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Craig. I'd like to speak against it being a warrant article because it gives, I like the idea that, and perhaps Mr. Jermaine could chime in. He was listening, he was at the select board meeting on Monday. But Mr. McCaffrey, as the chair, determined that this is such an important item that it might become money that's right off the top before the splits and everything. And he was even talking that it, there's no reason why it shouldn't be $200,000 or so. And we owe it to the people to put roads above anything else in town. If we're going to do anything, we have to show them that we take as much of an interest in the roads as they do. They're the ones with the vehicles that are falling in disrepair, and Jim's paying for tires every now and then for cars that are, and it's just a disgrace that to think that in a warrant article that you have to, and people can vote that down. The selectmen can decide not to put it on the warrant. So at least as a warrant article, I'm speaking against that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, noted. And any other comments?
Yeah, I know that Mr. Jermaine had a lot to say about it, and I'm sure the select board, I don't want to speak for him, but I know they're going to talk more about this in the future. This and the tree.
Okay.
And the trees.
All right, well, the I don't want to rehash the select board discussion the other night, which I listened to, is a matter of record, and I don't want to have to take up the time for us just to rehear it. It is posted. There are minutes, and I welcome everybody to observe that. And so unless Mr. Jermaine has something he wants to add beyond that, I suggest we move on so we can keep on track. Mr. Jermaine, anything to add?
No, I concur with what you're saying. We are discussing it at the select board, and we'll continue to discuss it.
Okay, great. Jim, back at you for
Thanks.
your Form 7 on Birch Street, I believe is next.
Birch Street is next. Okay, you can do that one. So Birch Street, this has been on the capital planning committee. We've been tossing this around, and the reason why it's been delayed for so many years is the reason we were looking at if we were have to have a land acquisition, or how we want to actually install this type of drainage system. The main reason for this is that it's, we've got the problem on Village Street cleared up, but now what we're doing every heavy rainstorm, the basin down on Birch Street, it's flooding over and it's just pouring into people's private property. And with stormwater management, we don't accept people, or even in general law. I mean, you can't. The town doesn't accept people putting water onto the public right of way, and we can't discharge our water onto private property. And there's several parcels of land on Birch Street that are being severely damaged by this not being properly a drainage system in it. So what we're looking at is putting Caltech systems along Village Street and one on Birch Street. A Caltech system is a large like septic system box that will be dug into the ground, and that will be placed, add additional catch basins along Village Street. So we'll slow the process of the water coming from, so it won't flow down the curve and go down Birch Street. And we believe the cost of that, I mean, until we get it out to bid, will be about $711,728. The design and overseeing price is $107,000, and the and the cost for the construction would be $604,000. And again, this is you're in the committee, so you know that each year I've come and I've taken it off. And because we weren't exactly sure of the design plan for where it would work properly. And I gave the
Okay,
breakdown.
thanks, Jim. And the funding source,
The funding source, I'm sorry, that would be a borrowing from the Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
and I assume construction would be done this calendar year, or you're talking next calendar year?
Well, it would go, the funding, once we get it July 1st, we'd be able to put it out to bid because we wouldn't be able to pay for the engineering services. So all that work would start, and I would hopefully think that we could be able to get something like this done into late fall of this year with.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Yes.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Jim, you
Yes.
said a borrowing from the enterprise fund.
Mhm.
So could you elaborate a little bit on that? How is it a borrowing rather than a payment?
So what we do is they would go out and bond the $711,000, and it would be paid off in a 20-year note. Just
I
like
see.
when you buy a
Okay.
car or something like that. It's just a little more expensive than a car these days, but.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Doug.
just a quick question. I apologize if this is just my own ignorance, but I see this coming up a fair amount where the contingency fees on a lot of these bids seem to me really high. Like, are the estimates potentially off by that much that you need 50% of the construction cost to be a contingency plug in there? I mean, that just, again, I could be ignorant about how this whole stuff works, but that just seems to me to be a really high number.
So what you don't want to do, we know there's ledge on Village Street. We know in that general vicinity from work that's been done on there. And if you look on the private property on the side of the roads, you can definitely see ledge. If you start this project and you're halfway through with it, you just can't put a road plate over it and say, okay, I'll wait till November. So if the funds aren't used, then you wouldn't borrow that full amount.
Does ledge mean blasting?
It could be blasting. It could be tedious work of a jackhammer, on the front end of the backhoe, just pulverizing it, trying to break it up.
Okay.
Anybody else? Jim, what do you estimate a rate, the effect on rates for this type of borrowing? Well, actually, so that would be a tough question, right? Is because since it's based on impermeable surface, but.
So it would just, they don't care about that. I mean, it would just be on the full amount. And again, I don't want to speak for the treasurer collector, but she went out and she borrowed, the rates were so good at this time. She went out and borrowed the money for the DPW building project because they were so good. So if something like this would get passed, I would assume that she would, if rates are still, in July, good, she would probably do the same.
Sorry, I'm talking about rate on the rate payer. So rate increase on the payer.
Yeah, that I'll get back to you on that. Maybe I can work.
That's a tough one.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I misunderstood your question.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think we're on to PFAS.
We can eliminate sewer. There's nothing in sewer, so we can go right to PFAS. So in sewer, we're using the funds that were allocated from the November town meeting. We will continue with our phase 5 II removal. That bid is going out within the next week or two, and we'll continue that through the summer and fall of this year. So there's no request in the sewer department. And then the fun subject, PFAS. I can give you just a brief update. I just got we get our reports now on the 10th of each month from our 2 sites that are tested monthly. And
Lucky us.
Yes, so we got our well number 3. Last month it was 13.2. This week it went up to 15.6. Well number 5, the month of December, it was 16.16, which put it in a trigger of being tested monthly. It went down to, the next month, it went down to 9.85. And then today it came back at 5 point something. What does that mean? I just, so at least that's trending in the right direction. You know, that's going down. And that could be that the river level at the Charles River at well number 5, that's well into the woods off of Village in Norfolk Road. And it's close to the Charles River, although, I mean, we're groundwater, it could be influenced by what's flowing by. And if you remember, when it was at 16.16 back in January, we had that heavy rains and the Charles was way up there. So is it something that's coming further upstream? That's what these 2 projects that we're looking for, that will investigate and give us an answer of, you know, how they'll do a hydraulic study that will show one coming from, you know, where is the PFAS migrating from, in which direction, and that could assist us with going after maybe some of the pollutants of the people that polluted the you know, our system. So the first one is for $255,600. That will do that service for wells number 3, 4, 5, and 6. As we know that there's PFAS, I'm sure you all know from listening to me talk about it like every day, there's PFAS in every one of our wells. We range from 4 parts per trillion to almost, at well number 2, 29.6 parts per trillion. The threshold is 10 parts per trillion, where you test monthly. When it's below, when you don't have any, when you just have any type of number, you test quarterly. And then when you're over the 20 parts per trillion, you have to remove the system from the distribution system. And that's what we have done with the Judge DeAngelis treatment plant. That's wells 1 and 2. So this would not take care of that. This would take care of wells number 3, 4, 5, and 6, because we still have to plan ahead. We still have to look into if well number 3 is going up on a monthly basis, and we have to hit that 20 parts per trillion, and we have to notify the public that we're taking well 3 offline, there's going to be more consequences that well 3 is one of our biggest producing wells. I mean, it's probably one of the oldest wells that we have. And to take wells 1 and 2 and 3 offline at the same time, you would be able to survive with well 4, 5, and 6 on, but it would be, you'd see low water pressure, you know, almost constant. There would be a big demand on those 3 wells to pump constantly for our demand of water that's needed. And, you know, you could take a chance of, you know, burning out a pump or something of that nature, which could almost, you know, counteract the whole even worse. So what this will do is give us an idea of, you know, treatment is the only answer. Treatment is the only way that you're going to remove PFAS from our system. It's not going to go away. Once it's there, it's in the ground system, it's in the aquifer, and there's just no way you're going to get rid of it. The only way you're going to do it is through treatment. So the 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's a precautionary, and that's a design that would include some design, but not a full design project. The next one is more of a design for wells 1 and 2 DeAngelis treatment plant. And that amount is, I mixed up my papers here, sorry, is $197,990. The only thing we're waiting on, we did apply for a grant from the Mass DEP for this exact amount of $197,990, and that would give us design for a new treatment plant at wells 1 and 2 at the DeAngelis plant. We have not heard. I emailed the director yesterday, and I was told that, yep, you'll hear she didn't tell me we were getting it. She didn't tell me we weren't getting it. So, you know, every indication that we got from the central regional offices that they felt that we were very much in line to get this grant. But I can't say we've got it because I don't know. They haven't reported back to me. And believe me, once I hear about it, everybody's going to know that either we got it or we didn't get it. But we still have to plan ahead. May's coming quickly. We were hoping that if we got the grant in January, Kleinfelder would have been able to complete the design, and we would have actually been going to town meeting in May for the $3.5 million to $4.5 million for the treatment plant. So this may push it off till the November town meeting, or if something catastrophic happens, that we may have to have a special town meeting to vote for the funds if we have to take something offline, and we have to look into temporary treatment plants that can be actually built into the systems. I apologize for going around in circles about it, but it's really not a good thing, and it's something that we are looking for sources of where this came from. You know, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're looking at outside sources that we just can't speak of right now because of legal ramifications of that. You know, a lot of that will be discussed at the next select board meeting. Outside sources have been tested, and we've found PFAS on outside properties around the DeAngelis treatment plant at very, very high levels. That could show that there's a good reason why it's, that the plant is offline. So I would ask for support on both of these projects. How it's going to be funded yet. I haven't we really haven't sat down with the town administrator or the finance director to see if there's enough funding that we would take this out of, reserves that are there. It could come out of that, or it could be a borrowing. I hope it's not going to be a borrowing, because I hate to borrow money for a design of something of the magnitude. But, we would get back to the board, and it's mainly to the select board, and advise them, we have both of these funds are coming from. We're talking over close to $500,000. Hopefully that we do get the grant, and we will be able to eliminate the wells 1 and 2. There's going to be an article in the paper, the Millis Medway paper. So I think that's going to bring it to the forefront again. We still get calls on a daily, not a daily basis, but we do get a lot of calls. People call, is my water safe to drink? Why did you send me that letter? Deirdre can attest to that. We get many questions of the safety of the water. It is safe to drink because every well that's on is below the 20 parts per trillion. That's what's the MCL that's set forth by the Mass DEP. So that's why I can safely say that, yes, the water is safe to drink. So we can talk about this. If you have any questions, we can go on, I'm sure, all night long about this, but this isn't going to go away. This is going to be here until we come up with solutions on all 6 of these wells on treatment plants. So it's the beginning of a long, luckily we have a lot of new customers coming online to help share the cost of this.
I'll get us started just to kind of kick off the discussion here. As this is not the first time we've talked about it. So are other wells their results fluctuating as much as well 5?
No.
Okay.
No, not to that magnitude. Nope.
Okay. So it kind of leads me into my next question, which is, well 3 is, as you, I don't want to put words directly in your mouth, but paraphrasing, is the workhorse of the, at least amongst, it's a workhorse amongst them. And so well 3, based on what you told us, is trending certainly in the wrong direction and is not fluctuating based on what you just said. And so all that said, my question is, do you think that the current pace of studies and not necessarily designs is adequate to get in front of the problem so that we're not waiting to the 20 parts per trillion threshold. Because if you hit 20 parts per trillion on well 3, I don't sense that you're waiting for that, but relying on Springtown meetings and fall town meetings and articles and other items certainly tells me that it just puts a little caution, a little skepticism is too wrong of a word. I defer to you. You're the expert and you live this every day. I just want to make sure that you think that that's adequate, that you're not beholden to an event that happens twice a year.
So I think that to try to answer that question, I would think that, this study it gives us a sense of its test borings. So, the treatment plants that we're looking at, they're tubular type. The water will go in and they'll be cleaned. They're several hundred feet long. So we still don't know if we have the right proper area that at these wells that they can go in. So we would have to do test borings. So if we get all that would help the design process along. They're also looking, the select board requested that, and the committee that we meet every once a month on Thursday, requested the engineering firm to look and see, and this will do that also, is can 3, 5, and 6 be done by one treatment plant? Would we be saving enough in piping work that we could send it all to one plant that would treat well 3, 5, and 6? 4's way, it's off too far off, and 1 and 2 you couldn't do it. But something like a well 3, 5, and 6, one, the water would still be pumped, but they would just go to one, this major plant somewhere in the town, and go into the distribution system. So this type of study has to be done first because of the land around wells 1 and 2. When we did that, when we did the DPW, we rezoned it. So everything in there, it can be used for any type of DPW municipal work. So there's a parcel of land that we know that this new treatment plant will fit in, because it won't fit in the building that's there. We will eliminate the air stripper, so that will save us a little bit of room. But even with the new construction, it will, this type of treatment plant will fit. I don't know if that really answered your question, but I think that the design and what's in the scope of work will give us a heads up farther than where we are right now for all 3 of the plants.
Yeah, I guess without the soliloquy up front, really the question is it more appropriate for this to take place by a reserve fund request, which you did hit on, versus waiting for Springtown meeting and articles. I sense that you're, based on the current rate, well 3 will be close, approaching 20, very close by the summertime on the current rate.
It's funny, like last year. So I think if anybody wants to look at these numbers, everything's online. Every test that we've ever done, once we get them, and once I finally get the finalized one for the reports that I just got now, Debbie puts them on immediately. So you can follow the trend. If you look at the original trend at well 3, like you said, it went down, and now it's going back up again. And we were at that. I think our very first test was like around that 13 point something that we're at now, and it went down a little, and now it's going back up again. And if it ever gets to a case, they come in with these big trailer trucks, and you can put them in. We know what the cost of that already is. We've already gone out and looked at the company that would supply it. We know that the cost is just to get the machine here, $200,000+. Then the pipe work would have to be done. We'd have to keep it heated. It would have to be manned, and
you're talking a temporary treatment solution,
treatment,
correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, you've answered my question, and I don't want to take up all the time. Anybody else, please?
I guess I have a question as to what caused all of this, Jim.
PFAS, there's many different aspects of PFAS, and just to answer it quickly is it's a man-made substance. And it's in anything and everything that we do in our life, Joyce. It's in cleaning products. It comes from Teflon. Don't get so much bogged down on, they know it's in foam from fires. I think that's more into, it's in a lot of landfills because of everything that I just said. When you have a capped landfill, that stuff is still buried and it's still washing off of it. So it's in our cleaning project. It's in makeup. It's in hairspray. It's in the bottles that they tell you to go out and buy, the plastic bottles of water. There's probably more PFAS in that cap of the bottle than. Don't get Pete going on it because I know he's waiting. He's done a lot of research.
What caused such large buildup in our tanks?
I can't say. I can tell you the reason why I went up and I did the voluntary, and I think that may answer your question. We know that we had 2 producing factories in Millis that used a substance to rainproof roofing materials, boots, and other types of materials. And I knew that those 2 properties were coming close to being sold off and being built on. And I knew if we didn't do this testing, because we're not required to do this testing until October. And if we waited to that, there could have been a building on one of them. And so both of those properties are being tested right now. And they come back with, one of them came back with extremely high numbers. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody in Millis that's probably lived there all their life. They know exactly what I'm talking about. So like I say, PFAS, just like asbestos and everything else, was widely used. PFAS is a whole bunch of different stuff. That's why I say there's like, and they want to even add more to the list. That's going to make it even worse. But a big substance they say is foam for putting out fires. So how did it get, we're talking about a well that's 800 feet deep. How did it get from ground level to that almost a quarter of a mile away? So, I mean, and that makes me scary of the fact that, should everybody be worried about it? Probably should be, because how long did it take it to get there? We didn't put it in there. It's not coming from, leaves off of trees or anything else like, well, not the same, it's coming from rain, but we can go on about it. It's a man-made substance, Joyce, the best way I can explain it. It's a man-made substance. So how it's getting into the ground, it's getting into the aquifers, and a lot of it comes from landfills and from factories and from using fighting fires with foam. Is there a general explanation on it?
So are you referring to the GAF then, and you're referring to the Herman Shoe, or?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Joyce, you all done?
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I just want to be careful, Joyce, that we're not accusing anybody of it yet until we've done the full study. So
I'm not accusing anyone. I was just, when he referred to businesses and made reference to them, I wanted to be sure of what he was referring to.
Yeah, because until we get the right final study. But the other point is, I know it seems to me, maybe it's just silly and it doesn't work this way, but it seems like it should. We can overspend on snow removal because it's an emergency issue. But if we lose drinking water, quite honestly, that seems far more of an emergency to me than snow. Is there any provision under the water rules or laws that allow us to do emergency funding on a select board or another type of vote pending town meeting to get a temporary treatment plant in if the worst case scenario is realized prior to being able to schedule a town meeting? Because I, for one, don't want to go, 4 weeks, 6 week notification period with no water?
I legally can't answer that. I have an assumption on how that works, but I know that we're looking for a new legal firm to represent us and give us guidance on all of that. And they're going to assist us through that process. It's gotten to that point where that we need to do that.
Yeah,
and those questions will be answered.
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful to know, because if there is a way to do emergency funding, I mean, even if it's just to get that temporary plant that you spoke of, which is quite costly but it can be here quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, Craig, if I could piggyback on what you said, when I refer to a reserve fund request, it's not for something that's temporary. It's not in reaction to something. It's to accelerate the pace at which the study and the design gets done. I mean, I've heard Jim say many, many times, this is not going away. And I see us trending towards 20, which requires state law requires that the well be shut down. I mean, to me, that's where I'm at. I think we're moving too slow. And, I guess I'm a half glass, half empty and full of PFAS kind of guy.
No, I agree with you. PFAS is probably my number one concern of what's coming down at us for an uncontrollable cost. But I mean, as bad as the roads are, if you don't have water you can drink, it's, that's critical. But I'm just trying to find out the worst case scenario if a well tests higher tomorrow, because even if we accelerate the study, you're still, I don't know, a year on construction, 9 months on construction, depending on the season. So, I mean, even if there is an acceleration of the study by 2 months, that still means we're a year out of, out for any type of building to deal with it if we decide to go that way. So I'm just worried about worst case scenario, because I'm a glass that's got a leak in the bottom and half full kind of guy. Worst case scenario, how can we immediately get a temporary treatment plant in without having to wait 6 weeks for an announcement of a special town meeting that we hope we have a quorum at, that we hope we get a yes vote at? And I know you don't know the answer, Jim. I'm saying if we can get a legal opinion, and Pete probably is the right person, if we can get a legal opinion on how that works, that would be hugely helpful, because it seems silly to me that the snow and ice can be overspent with no issue, but drinking water can't.
Okay.
So I guess
Any other comments from the committee?
So
Okay,
the rest
none
of the
heard.
I had one, how does that affect the water that we supply to other towns?
So actually, Joyce, that's a myth. We don't supply any water to anybody. The only water that goes to the ratepayers of the town of Millis. No, we don't sell 1 gallon of water to other than Millis residents. No one gets any water anyplace but Millis. Other than we have customers in Medway, there's but they're part of the system. That we have like 86 people that from I think it's Sherburne, Holliston, up in the perimeters near Glen Ellen and stuff like that, and Farm Street. But we don't sell water to anybody.
Well, how does it affect those people that are in our town that you just mentioned?
They'd be the same as us, because if they
Have they been notified?
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And Jim, they're on our drinking water just because it's geographically
Correct.
close. Yeah, it's just the easiest way to get them under. There's not a lot of them. Yeah, it's not a revenue source for us in excess of a normal ratepayer's revenue source.
And if we remember, the Norfolk ones cost us more money than, well, anyways, that's, if you remember back years ago.
Mr. Chair.
Chairman,
Mr. Riley.
Jim, what's the situation in surrounding towns? What their numbers look like?
So we did ours a lot further. We were ahead of a lot of other towns, and that's why we had great representation from the DEP, because we were like their guinea pig. They used us as the report that's going out to the general public. They've given both myself and the town administrator, we have their cell phone numbers that they actually answer the phone. So I don't think Medway, I think Medway, Franklin, and Medfield are just starting their process of testing. I've heard that Medway is found a lot of their wells not to have anything in it, which I just can't understand it. But Medfield, I don't know if they've even started to do their report, but I think Medway, because it's the same engineering firm that represents them.
Medway must just be washing it down to Millis then.
There you go. That's how many gun clubs do they have up there?
Okay, Mr. Jermaine.
just a quick comment. We at the select board are cognizant of the issue. We have sent a letter to the governor, and our state representatives requesting funding and requesting some clarification on these issues. And we are right now seeking to try to get funding because we're going to need funding to offset some of these costs. But at any rate, we are aware of it. We're very much concerned with it. And we want to make sure that there is a water supply available to us. And as has been noted, we can't afford to have other wells shut down. Otherwise, we are going to impact the ability of the community to meet its water needs. So that's where we stand.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Jim, real quick, because we glossed over it, but what's the ROM rough order of magnitude for the construction of treatment on all the wells?
So you talk the cost or the time frame?
The construction cost.
Each well we're looking at 3.5 million. So you would look at 5 and 6 as 3.5 million. You would look at 3.5 million because it's the system that you're installing. So you'd almost do identical, so once we get the design for wells 1 and 2, we would use the same type of treatment facilities for the other. So 5 and 6 are together, 3 and 4. So for the 3 other treatment plants.
Okay, so it's roughly 3.5 million per treatment system, and you're talking there's at least 3 of them.
There's 3 of them, correct?
Okay. Okay. No other comments or questions heard? Please proceed.
So lastly, there's a study, if you remember last year, we did the risk and resilience study for the EPA, and this is the second phase, and that is updating the emergency response plan, and that would be for $30,000, and that will complete another unfunded mandate that is that's already done, but it's an update of something that was every 10 years needs to be updated to keep a water system, moving forward. So that's a mandatory thing, and that would definitely come from the reserve funds, the $30,000 for that. And we have completed. We're in review of the cybersecurity aspect of the SCADA system in the water system. That was completed a couple of weeks ago, and we're actually reviewing that. So we will get everything done for the risk and resilience part of that was funded in last May's town meeting. That'll be filed in plenty of time. It's due by June 30th.
Okay. Jim and Deirdre, could you please quickly just pull up the document that Jim is going to speak on next? So I think you're done with emergency response plan. Is that right,
Yep.
Jim? Okay. Please just let Deirdre know which document you're going to discuss next.
Well, I think that if, depending on how involved the board wants to get, we're at the organizational chart. So that's way down there because we've gone through all these. And these are just all standard forms that we, all department heads, supply everyone each year.
Okay.
There's no change in.
So Deirdre, if you would start at the org chart, and then what we're going to do is, Jim, the floor is still yours. Okay. I want you to page through those until you hear one of us holler uncle with a question or something.
Okay, thank you.
Or a comment.
So that's the organizational chart. It shows all the department personnel. The next page is a Form 2. That's the salaries for all people working under the DPW. That includes water, sewer, stormwater. That's all of us. I did not carry any, new employees, or we have an open position there at the moment. We're looking to fill that position, and that's the base salary for that position. And that's even above that. That's already allocated. So that's not the position I'm looking for. I'm looking for another position.
Is that the position that currently has the name Paul Everett in it, or is it a different one?
It says open.
Okay, I see it. Thank you. Keep going.
Yep. So the next is the vehicle. Our vehicle, we're not looking for any new vehicles. The 2 that we requested in November will get us through, hopefully. Yeah, well, not hopefully, will get us through. It depends on what happens with, the new subdivision coming online. That may be something we may look for an additional piece of equipment at the November town meeting. But if we have to hire a contractor to do it, so be it. We'll hire a contractor to take care of it. You know, we have two great mechanics that keep our fleet and in fire, not so much fire. We don't maintain fire equipment. We take care of police, DPW, and the Council of Aging. The fire trucks are too complicated, and so they have their own person that comes out and takes care of that in the ambulances because they have to be certified for that type of work. The next is the buildings, and that's all the equipment that we own. That's all the lawnmowers, the roofs, and everything on the buildings. So that takes care of that. The next page we'll go through is, so we get into each budget, and again, when you want to read it, you can. I mean, it's a budget narrative for the general fund. I did combine water. I combined the general fund, street lighting, snow and ice in this budget. Usually we break them out, but they're all one, you know, it's all into the general fund.
Okay, you can keep going as fast as you're comfortable with.
Yep. So the next is just a breakdown of percentages that are paid out of the general fund for each employee that's paid out of the general fund. And the next is the transfer station. That's also, you know, that percentage that's paid out of the transfer station. The next is the budget line items. I've highlighted a bunch of stuff in red. That doesn't mean that they're going to be increased. That's still up to the town administrator to take a look at. He hasn't weighed in on this. It's a request. It doesn't mean it's going to go through, but it is a request to him. So we go through the snow and ice budget, street lighting, the transfer station. We had a large increase, believe it or not, this year. In my last report, that the previous year we had 800, and when I say 800 and something people, that's $30 and $85. So combined, we had 840 people. This year, when I sent the report in, it was 930 something. So we did have an increase in the transfer station, which was good. That was great. The next the budget narrative is the water budget narrative. And after that is the breakdown of employees working and their percentage. What I'd like to do is just quickly with the water budget, when you get time, if you want to look at it, if you look at the long-term debt and the long-term interest, as I stated earlier, the treasurer collector went out and borrowed for the DPW project. And that's the increase. So we will look at that during which we're ahead of schedule, which is great. And it's not significant. I mean, anything significant, but you know, we're talking about, I think, combined over 60,000 for the two interest in the debt for the two of them. And that covers, you'll see that in the water budget, the sewer budget, and the general fund that has to come out of revenues. I don't project that comes out of the town administrator's budget. So when you're looking at that budget, take a look at that, and you'll see the cost of the increase for each year for the next 20 years that's included for the DPW building. Next, we're at the sewer. Again, we're moving forward. We're doing great with our eye removal. Tomorrow night, we're meeting with the sewer committee, the enterprise committee, and coming up with hopefully a plan of addressing people that are not connected to sewer and coming up with a plan of trying to get them tied into sewer to assist with paying for these costs. The budget is there. No big shakes out there. We did meet with I have to update. We did get the final cost for the treatment at the Charles River Pollution District. There is a significant increase in that because we're actually now sending a lot more sewage to the treatment plant with, you know, the over 150 plus new homes that you know, between Toll Brothers and the Acorn Place and the Hickory Hill subdivision. So you do see an increase of that, but don't forget we're collecting that revenue. So we have to pay for it to get treated. So we're finally starting to see some, revenue coming in to the water and sewer funds for all these brand new homes. I work with Kleinfelder and we go over this for the stormwater. I would encourage everybody, if you have time, to read it. It gives a good breakdown of what we did last year and where we are, what we're doing, what we plan on doing this year. We're getting not self-independent totally. There will always be something, and a firm will have to come in and do training and stuff like that. But we're out there actually testing all the outfalls. And that's a big part of the stormwater MS4 permit. So I think we have 140 left to do this year, and the crew's going to start going out next week. So we were trained on that. When I say we, the guys were trained on that, and we're using our own iPads to locate them and do all the testing. So we don't need the service of Kleinfelder for that any longer. So again, please read the budget narrative, because again, it gives us everything we need. The breakdown on the staffing is for the stormwater. There's no increases there. It's the same. And in the budget for the stormwater, the only increase on the stormwater budget is the transfer into the general fund. And that's 60 pages. I'm sorry it was so long, but
Okay. I'm sorry to ask you to speed through it like that. And if anybody has any questions on it, they certainly can pose them, but I would encourage them to take the time to read through the document as well.
And just in closing, Mr. Chair, just the DPW building project is well on its way. I'm sure that Mr. Clarko will come and report back on the progress of it. If you take a ride down there, people go to the transfer station, anybody just take a look. We've got the foundation in. They're actually putting electrical and pipes in, and you're going to start to see the structures actually going up within the next week or two. And pretty exciting time for us at the DPW, and we thank everyone involved and mostly the ratepayers that will be paying for the structure for the staff.
Okay, real quick on that, Jim, since you brought it up, last fall we voted for a plus up in contingency funds, a subject near and dear to Doug's heart, as well as others of us. Have you hit any conditions that would require you to use any of those funds?
As of this time, and again, I would, not that no, we haven't, but I think Mr. Clarko can probably address that. But we have not, no. We found good soil, clean soil throughout the project. Anything that was excavated for both foundations, and that would be where you would find it. No, we did not find anything.
That's terrific news. Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please, Doug.
Jim, this is a ton of information.
Yep.
A ton of work, a lot of complicated stuff. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate everything that you put out there and put together and present. I think there's a lot of people in town that are more than clueless about most of this stuff, if not all of it. And when those people complain about things, I'm happy to as nicely as I can explain to them the reality of things. And it's really helpful to have all of this information that you guys put together. So thank you.
Thank you. And Deirdre, that she assists in almost all the getting, as you know, for you, she also does that for getting the numbers correct and looks at it, over and over again and say, no, you did this. So
yes, you're right. That's true. Deirdre deserves a great deal of praise as well.
Well, I second that. Not that a motion was made, but I second that as well. And I appreciate you spending the time and letting us pepper you with questions. I don't think we were too hard tonight or too harsh. So those were
no
softballs,
trucks,
I would
fine.
say. What's that?
No trucks.
No trucks, that's right. Okay, last call for questions for Jim, and then we're going to move on. Thank you, Mr. McKay.
Thank you, and you all have a good night. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I believe next up on the agenda is discussion, at least the Finance Committee's opening discussion on the 61A purchase, otherwise known as the Braun property. So I'll summarize. Essentially, the town has an option to purchase the property that's called the Braun property because it's under a 61A, basically a tax status, a special tax status. And under that tax status, if the property is ever considered or contemplated for conveyance, that the town has commonly referred to as first right of refusal to purchase the property. And I think that's Mr. Jermaine or Mr. Kaczynski can correct me, please, but I think that's in the neighborhood of about $1 million for the property if the town were to purchase it. And I forget the exact figure of the potential. If it weren't purchased, then there's an estimate by the assessor's office that the revenue that would be potentially brought in, and I think it's upwards. Actually, I'm not even going to guess at that. I thought it was. I will guess it's in the neighborhood of 400,000 a year. Go ahead.
Just wanted to highlight that there is a back tax provision or a rollback tax provision.
Yep.
We did pull together the number on that. That's around $11,000. So
Can you explain that a little more?
So basically, under Chapter 61A, when a parcel of land is converted back as away from the 61A exemption, there's basically a look back for 5 years, and it's called the look back provision. And for those 5 years, the town assesses the differential between what the agricultural tax is and what the retail market tax is. So that tax has been computed by the assessor as approximately $11,000. So if the town were to purchase the property, then the town would not get those funds. But
Per
if
year,
it's a
Mike?
private sale and the sale goes through, the town would get those funds.
Per year?
No, that's the total for the 5
Okay,
years.
total.
It's
All right.
11,000.
Okay, and so Mike, the estimate, if based on the conceptual plan that the developer has put forward, which I believe listening to Mr. McCaffrey in the meeting didn't have to, but has, and has included open space in their plan consistent with a 55 and over community, that tax revenue is estimated at what?
Yeah, I believe they had estimated it in the $400,000 to $500,000 a year range. I mean, we haven't confirmed that. This is based on their proposal and their estimation of the proposal. So
Right.
that would be in that range based on what they say they're going to build as part of the project.
Yep. And that's a conceptual plan. It would still have to go through all the zoning and planning board and et cetera, building department, permitting, everything. Nothing is in terms of what the developer is planning. Nothing is set in, approved, but that's the developer is also familiar with Millis and Millis's bylaws and its rules for, operating and designing properties like this. So shouldn't be that tricky for them. Not that our rules are tricky to begin with, but they've done it. So that's it in a nutshell from my perspective, and it comes down to choices, right? It's preserve open space. There is considerable acreage, and you can certainly get into the specifics of the property and the surrounding properties. There is considerable acreage that is currently owned by the town in the area. The property is in the south end of town off of Village Street. So there's some other properties around there. CPA or preservation type funds can be used in whole or in part to purchase the property. If any preservation type funds are used, it would essentially potentially put limits on future use even by the town for the use of the property. So the town doesn't have to develop it or do anything to it. Although there is a cost associated with purchasing the property, and that could be clearing it, maintaining it. So there is a bill to pay if the town takes this on. I'm trying to at least describe the issue in general terms without kind of giving an opinion on it. But there's going to come a time, and that's why I want to make sure that we've all listened to the hearing, which was just an informational hearing by the select board, that we have enough facts, and that the best place to obtain the facts is by listening or attending the hearing. Having now that the hearing is in the past, the best way to do it is listen to the video. It's not getting your information directly from me. So please, if you haven't done so, do so, because we will take a vote on this at some point. It likely will be an article in the Springtown meeting, and we'll have some more in-depth discussion on it, and we will take a vote. And I believe that the Finance Committee's vote and say matters. At that, I'm going to turn it over to anybody that wants to speak on it, and I'm actually going to start with Mr. Germain, if he would like to speak on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have much to say. I will say that you've summarized it rather well. We have also received a number of comments from the community. Those are being posted to the website. I very strongly recommend that people look at those. The primary issues that are coming up are the tax differentials. If we purchase the property versus if it is purchased by the developer, the multiple uses of the property, the potential use in the future. And then the second piece has to do with the long-term effect of, I've got to remember how we want to word this, the property itself, and I apologize, I've just lost my train of thought, can be used for other purposes if we purchase it, such as development, if we ever chose to do so, depending upon, as you pointed out, how we end up with the use of the funds to purchase the property. The other piece that's come up is the concern that should we be putting funds instead toward a senior center? These are all issues that are going to be discussed and are in the process of being discussed at the select board. So it's not that any of these are being ignored. I would encourage anyone who has a concern to please continue to post emails to the select board so that we can hear all the views, get all your thoughts, and entertain your questions during our meetings when this is reviewed at the select board. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Unfortunately, I did not hear, I was not able to watch the select board's meeting. However, has discussion been made as to what kind of impact having a 55 and older community is going to do to our town? What the impact is having more seniors moving in? I guess I'm questioning the benefits, trying to weigh out the benefits of us having a 55 and older community move in versus us own property that we can eventually use it for whatever we choose. Has that consideration been taken into effect? How it's going?
Yeah, Joyce, I don't know that it was debated specifically along the lines that you're asking. I do know that there was a brief interchange that the Millis's population is about 37-38% 65 and older, and
Right.
that we have obviously we have a larger population of 55 and older, which is it's an increasing rate group. But beyond that, I don't know that there was. I think that's up to every one of us that will vote, whether it be on the Finance Committee or at town meeting, is to decide what is of value to us, and it's a tough choice. And I think I also heard Mr. Germain say, just because that's what they're proposing, to buy the property for 55 and over, I don't think they're constrained to that. And if
I guess my concern is
Germain,
I
if
don't
you would
want our
confirm that.
town turning into a senior center, and I am a senior, but my concern is I don't want the majority of the people living in the town to be senior citizens because I don't know what kind of draw that would make, create for our town. We've got a brand new elementary school, state of the art, and we've got new library, new police, new fire. We're going to have new DPW to then just, I'm concerned. When is it the time? I guess if it was a different type of development, I might be more in favor, but I am a little concerned about more seniors and more needs for our police and fire and, greater
Well,
demand.
I guess I would just say that your comments are noted, and that's just, you're gonna have to base your consideration of it based on future more questions. And again, the proposal or what's being discussed is whether or not the town looks to purchase the property. And even at Springtown meeting, it's really just to embark on that process. It's not necessarily a vote to buy it or not. There's funding issues. There's a number of things that have to happen. So Joyce, I just think if that's how you feel about it, then stay tuned. And I would
I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but I just thought I'd ask if there had been any kind of studies of what kind of impact if we did have a 55 and older community.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman?
Borgman,
Oh.
hold on one second, Kath.
Yep,
And I
thanks.
see Doug and I hear Kathy, and I saw Mr. Borgman's hand up first.
Thank you, Pete. So my question, I think, might be for Mike, but I did listen to the meeting, and one of the things that came up that I'm not sure was fully addressed was the sewerage, requirements for that 50. I think it was 46 units or something. And Jim McCaffrey kind of mentioned that it was going to be, up to the developer. I didn't really understand that, because I think, isn't that really a town problem in order to address? And I think with Glen Ellen, we were already maxed out or close to being maxed out in order to support additional people coming onto the system. So I'm interested if Mike or somebody else has knowledge around that.
Mr. Chairman, I can try to answer that.
Please, Mike.
I think when Chairman McCaffrey was speaking about that, I think he was referring to the fact that ultimately when a developer comes into town and proposes any kind of development that requires utilities, it is the responsibility of the developer and their consultants to come up with those solutions as to how they're going to deal with the sewer issue and water and so forth. That doesn't mean they're not going to have interactions with the town if the project moves forward and they look to build. There certainly will be discussions between the developer and the town, and the issues concerning the town's sewer capacity with the Charles River Sewer Control District would be a big part of that. If that's the way they would go, if they were looking to go with as part of our regional sewer system, that would be an issue that would have to be worked out. I think it would be inappropriate for me to conjecture on it at this point, since it's really at the very early stages even of a proposal. But I think, again, what the chairman had indicated was that ultimately is an issue that the developer is going to have to find an answer to if they're going to move forward. And part of their attempts to do that would be having discussions with the town. So we're not sure where that would go if the project ended up moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure whether that was going to impact the town cost-wise in order to support that if needed. So.
Well, I mean, if you mean cost-wise, as far as if the development goes in?
Or, yeah, if the project did go forward and we needed to support 46, it sounds like it's really upon the developer in order to make that happen. But I thought the town basically had to negotiate or to gain more sewerage, I don't know, credits or whatever it's called in order to support those 46 units. Is that not
Right,
true?
the town wouldn't be forced to do it, but if the developer's plan was to move forward and it was asking the town to get access to the town's sewer capacity through our regional agreement, they would have to come and speak with the town and to see if that capacity was available for them. But again, ultimately, the responsibility falls on the developer to present a plan that's doable. The town is not necessarily required to provide that sewer capacity to them. It's really based on what we have available. So that would be a discussion. I couldn't say how that would turn out. If the town were to purchase the property, then certainly any sewer needs of the property would be dependent upon what eventual use the town had for the property, or if at some point it needed that type of utility for the
Right.
town's usage.
Okay.
Okay, Kathy.
No, I'll let Doug go first.
Just two quick questions. Mike, what did you say the potential tax revenue to the town would be from the development again? I didn't catch that.
I'm only reiterating what was indicated by the developer based on his proposals. I think his numbers were between $400,000 to $500,000 a year if the unit was fully built out, if the proposal was fully built out. So there's a lot of ifs there.
Yeah.
So that's not the official town number. That's the number that the developer had put forward, just kind of forwarding information that was discussed at the hearing the selectmen held recently.
And
Doug, I'll just add on to that I don't think that number is pulled out of thin air. I think that they worked with the assessor's office on like properties, but it doesn't undermine what Mike just said. I just think that it's an estimate based on.
It's dependent on the actual number of units that get built and when they get built and when the revenue starts to come in. And so
and the tax rate, and the tax rate on like properties. That's right.
So I'm not saying the number is bad. I'm just saying that it's not the town's number at this point.
This is Carol, and the developer didn't work with the assessor to come up with that number. He said 46 units at approximately $500,000 divided by 1,000 times our tax rate gets you 450,000. So it's
use data from it. Okay, all right.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I guess there was a question. The developer is Mr. Fox. Just for the record. What's the individual?
What's the end date for when the town has to make its decision?
Well, that's an excellent question, and we're kind of in a strange stretch of time because the governor's freeze on a lot of the clocks having to do with development and so forth has put a freeze on this. But I would expect, even with a current freeze, the town would have to make a decision prior to the fall town meeting. So therefore, I think it'd be prudent in my recommendation that the town make a determination, by this town meeting, if the town is interested. Otherwise, we'd have to hold a special town meeting sometime probably over the summer. But usually I believe it's 120 days. I'd have to check on that again with council, but I think it's 120 days from the time the town receives a completed package from the developer that there's a bona fide offer for the property.
I have more questions, but I'll hold them and wait and go individually or just offline till we don't take time.
Are you sure? Because I just assume have the discussion now.
No, it's not stuff that needs to be hashed out here at this meeting. It's just,
Okay. Well, we could all benefit from it. Go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to Ms. Joyce asked about the potential costs. You've heard the fire chief come every year to the FinCom and to the Board of Selectmen about the added workload based on over 55 developments. As a matter of fact, I think he's might be looking for a new ambulance based on the number of trips that have been going to Glen Ellen. And suffice it to say that with 44 homes going in there, that he would be making extra trips there. So that would be a cost. And also, one of the things that was brought up at the hearing, Mr. Chairman, was there was the cost of removal of the existing buildings and whatnot that are on the site now, and that would add to the cost. As many of you know, that the fire department's always looking for burn buildings as a way of training. And I'm sure that they would welcome the opportunity to burn those down. And there's not many electrical or anything there. So, and it would be less of an expense just to remove the ash. And I also want to say that probably all of you weren't here when the original open space in 1984 was purchased from Oak Grove Farm, and for a cost of $900,000. And, you know, try to figure out in 1984 how much $900,000 was. It's paid off. Then the town in its wisdom, probably Craig Schultz, and I don't know, I know Joycey was around, the Verderber and Cassidy property also in the town's wisdom had an override for that. The Dewar property went to the CPA. So now all of the present members are reaping the benefits of what our forefathers voted on. And I think it's very important that we give that same opportunity to this property on Village Street. And the reason that I would encourage purchase on this site is because there's no open space parcel per se, other than the one behind it. And there's no fields or playgrounds in that part of town. And for people to want to take strollers to get their kids to the ball fields or kids to walk to up at the town park, it's dangerous because there aren't any sidewalks. And I think consideration should be given to that area. Also, real estate taxes, they seem like a lot of money coming in, $450,000. However, we know by being on the finance committee that that money's gone in an instant. And then we have to worry about the DPW taking care. We just heard Jim McKay wanted a new staff to do the Bob Fox's other properties up on off of Acorn Street. Well, is he going to need a new staff now for that? The road and salt are going to go up. It's just a litany of things that, I mean, I could. I also heard someone say at the at some meeting the other night. Yeah, I think it was a selectmen's meeting that. Oh, the developer said that he's gonna, you know, put in ball fields. No, he's not. He's putting in walking fields and passive use. I can't imagine anybody living in an over 55 development would want a football field in the front of them with parents screaming louder than the kids do. So let's just make sure that we're clear on what he's offering the town. And also the area that he's donating is more or less the wetland. It's what he cannot build on. So, and also over 55 people, I have no proof of this, but I've been told in the past that they're not big supporters of schools. They come from, especially if they're coming from out of town. It's not like it's a senior that's from Millis moving to Millis. They
Right.
might have grandchildren in the school system. I think you're going to have a big voting block, and you may be seeing that at Glen Ellen in the next year or two when matters come up, that especially warrant articles, that you're not going to see a lot of support for those. If they can get a gang of people, you get 50, 60, 70 people coming from a Glen Ellen, and it can change the whole dynamic of a town meeting. And also, you said, Mr. Chair, I just want to, you mentioned something about that the town meeting vote is not the final vote, that there'll be funding considerations. I'd like an explanation for that, because I thought that all funding is presented at town meeting.
So as I mentioned, what I was referring to, Kathy, is that the Springtown meeting would be the warrant is contemplated to say whether or not we should pursue the purchase of the property and take it further, as Mike just explained, and likely in the fall would be the decision to allocate or appropriate funds. So yes, all funds are appropriated by a town meeting, but the spring town meeting warrant does not contemplate that actual appropriation.
Can I
Actually,
just
Mr.
get, can I
Chairman,
just get confirmation from Mr. Guzinski on that?
actually, Mr. Chairman, I do believe if the town were to move forward with this vote, we would be looking for borrowing authorization at this
Right.
town meeting.
Yeah.
So it would be a combination, authorizing the board to purchase the property and asking for authorization to borrow up to $1 million. But it would be based on, the discussions the select board that would be within the current cap, so it would not be a debt exclusion. But the town would have to be able to authorize the board to actually have the funding to move forward with the purchase. So.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you. And what would the fall, so could you clarify what would the fall town meeting or potentially a special town meeting?
Actually, I'm sorry if
needed
that was
for?
confusing. My point was, is if the town took no action at the spring town meeting, and then the select board decided over the summer that they really wanted to move forward with this, they would run out of time before the fall town meeting to act on it. Usually there is, I believe, 120-day clock on these types of options for the town. The clock has been put on hold because of the pandemic, but I would expect that clock to begin, not too far down the road, and then we'd only have about 4 months to act on it, which is likely to be before the fall town meeting. So that's why I think that the board, the select board, is looking to have the town make a decision at this upcoming spring town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for setting me straight.
Mr. Chairman.
Craig, yep, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just wanted to speak that I think it is a piece of property the town should acquire. There's so few that become available. When they do become available, we have no control over what goes in at a private sale. We do have, the only chance we have to acquire open space or dictate how it's used is through these 61A, I believe this was called. I've got too many of these legal codes running in my head. These 61A sales are the only chance we have to ever acquire the property. And this is what I was trying to ask Nate last week when I emailed him, but he hasn't responded. The different types of funding options available do absolutely dictate how we use it. If we use general borrowing, we can buy it. We can resell it at a later date. We can put a police station, fire station, water treatment plant, whatever we choose on it. But if we use CPA funds, and this is where I needed Nate to clarify, is there a difference between recreation and Mike or Pete, you probably know more about this than I do, but the recreation funds, would they restrict it to only, I guess recreation funds would allow active or passive use recreation.
Yes.
But open space would only allow for basically
Passive.
walking trails.
Mhm.
Is that,
If
am I
I may,
correct?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I can attempt
Yes,
to
go ahead,
answer that. So I have had discussions with town council in regards to this. And actually, there is history in the Commonwealth for these types of purchases where funds from several different sources are utilized for the purchase of a property. So just theoretically speaking, if 3/4 of the purchase funds came from, say, the general fund through a bond, and 1/4 of the funds came through the community preservation fund, you could basically divide the property up and say this 1/4 of the property is going to be set aside for the use outlined by the community preservation funds, and this 3/4 of the property is going to be set aside for any legal use that the town so decides. So there are opportunities for having multiple funding sources and still keeping some flexibility on the land use moving forward. So and certainly the property, there's different aspects to this property. There's probably sections of the property that are more conducive, more wooded for passive walking trails, and others that are fairly flattened fields that might be more useful for an active recreation or even a future municipal building or school building 10, 15, 20 years from now, if that's what's decided. And I don't want to put ideas out there that are going to make the neighbors nervous. So we have no specific municipal purpose in mind. I think opportunities are on the table for the long term for the community if this were to go ahead. You know, there's certainly pros and cons to all the sides of this issue, but just from a purchase standpoint, there are options as far as the funding sources.
And just the last question I have on this, I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear on this. There's nothing that is bonding this developer to just 46 houses of senior, of over 55 housing. That's a proposal that he's floated. That's nothing that is, you know, zoned or the subdivision plan hasn't been approved or any of that stuff. So that's his proposal today. Tomorrow that proposal could change to something else. I know we went through it at Glen Ellen a few times, and I'm glad it ended where it did, but there was concern that it was going to go a different direction for a while. And I just wanted to make sure I'm clear on that. Is that the case, that there's nothing that's holding him to that at this point?
That's my understanding. He has not restricted himself. This is just, he's showing what the plan is for the development, but there's no legal restriction on that. Once the ownership is gained, he can move forward with any legal proposal.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
I think that's Katie.
It is. I have a quick question, and I think I know the answer to it, but I want to confirm. My question's related to the existing buildings on the property that Kathy referred to. So it sounds like it's safe to assume those probably just need to come down, but is there any possibility of those being repurposed? Do we know the answer to that?
I think they're chicken coops.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
can't
have no
say
sense
for
of what they
sure.
are, so.
I have not toured the buildings. I cannot say for sure, but I would say it's unlikely. Other than maybe using them as a storage shed or something, and that's taking a leap. I would not say we can measure that as a valuable asset on the property. You know, it's something that could be, but it shouldn't be counted on for any you know, specific use.
Got it. Thank you.
Chairman, I will tell you, walking through the property, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near those structures, and I wouldn't call them buildings.
You know, the price of wood now, they might be people, you might be able to give it away.
Yeah, if it's decent wood, I'll stop by.
Mr. Chairman?
Not only that, I would just say that there's the potential for environmental hazards when those buildings come down and people start digging and, you know, finding. I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea. I just know that old buildings often house things like vehicles that have been leaking oil for years. So all I'm trying to say is, in general, there may be opportunities like Katie is inquiring. There may be liabilities underneath those structures as well. You just don't know. And there was somebody had asked for the floor.
I just had one more.
Go ahead, Doug.
I think this is really directed more at Mr. Jermaine. So is what Mike said accurate, that the select board doesn't really have any idea what they would do with that property at the moment? There's just a bunch of ideas on the table, but there's nothing sort of specific. And where is the select board at this point on your due diligence overall for that piece of property? And is May sufficient time to finish that?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, please.
I will try to answer those, Doug. First of all, the select board has been gathering information up to this point. We haven't discussed it in terms of any recommendations. We are going to be doing that very shortly. So I'm trying to be very open on that. We want community input to the maximum extent, and we've been just gathering information. Regardless of what any of the three of us may have, we haven't expressed views for purchase or not purchase at this point. In terms of potential use for the property, once again, we're trying to keep options open. And we have talked with the town administrator and town council regarding potential uses for the property, all the way from doing nothing other than cleaning it up to making ball fields available and other recreational things, hiking trails and so on. And potentially, and I just say, and I want to be careful on this, sometime in the future, if the town needed to consider using it for a town building of some sort, trying to keep that option open. But these are all options. At this point, there have been no decisions, and in fact, no lengthy discussion about what the potential uses for the property would be, other than trying to make sure we look at all aspects of it. I hope that answers your question.
And Mr. Chairman, I could add just a little bit to that.
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead,
know
Mike.
there was a question about the due diligence on the property. I would say that, the town will do its due diligence. I would also say that the date of the town meeting would not necessarily be the absolute deadline for that. Just to make sure everyone knows, if the town meeting were vote to approve the purchase of the property and the borrowing, it simply authorizes the select board to do so. It does not require them. So that if the board found, after continued due diligence, say during the month of May, that there were any issues, and we're not aware of any at this time, but did find that, they're not bound to buy the property even after the town meeting. And they're just given the authorization to do so should the board, through its due diligence, determine that the property is in a condition that would be of benefit to the town without any liability for the town.
Mr. Chairman, in closing, if I might.
I don't know that it's in closing, but you may.
No, for me anyway. I just want to share a life lesson with everyone. I don't know if I'm the elder states lady here or what on this board, but I would strongly advise everybody in life and in town matters, never vote in the present on any future event. It's not fair to advertise vote no on this project because we still have other issues down the road, i.e. the train station, the senior center. Don't do that. We'll take care of those issues when it happens. How many times have you regretted doing something that you wish you had done, but you didn't? And don't let this be one of them, because, and we don't have to decide today, like Mr. Jermaine said, about what's going on in that property. I think we bought Cassidy Field 20 years ago, and it was only last year that they're talking about using that as a senior center. So you've got this in your back pocket, and it might be the only 61A available that's of this size. I know for a fact that this is the last large developable piece of land. I heard that from the Mr. Fox himself. This is it for Millis, for a large subdivision. So think about that also when you're deciding. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. And that very well could be the last in closing, unless somebody has another comment or question that they want to pose. None heard. Thank you very much. We're going to keep this on the agenda. I'm sure we'll be discussing it, as developments happen. And again, please watch the video. Obviously, there's some good information to be gleaned there. Okay, next is discussion of the warrant items. Mike is going to hit the highlights or anything that has changed significantly since our last brief. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the only new items I'd like to point to on the draft list are items 16 and 17. I know the committee met with the DPW director earlier this evening. The board has placed really those placeholders there, the tree pruning and removal and road maintenance and repair, mostly because they want those to be addressed either in the article list or in the DPW budget. But they're there just, they may come out if the, if the requested funding ends up in the DPW budget. I think the board feels that could certainly be an appropriate approach. These are things that will need to get done on an annual basis. So again, as was done at the fall town meeting, there was a certain amount of funds put aside for tree pruning and removal. This would be basically the same thing. And again, this may come out if these funds end up within the DPW budget. And for road maintenance and repair, the board is looking at actually putting funding in there to assist the Chapter 90 funding for road maintenance and repair in the town. And again, those funds should either be in an article or within the DPW budget. So at this point, they're placeholders, but just wanted to, make sure the finance committee was aware of the board's discussion and the select board's intent in regards to those two items. I don't believe there are any other changes in the draft list in front of you. 2 weeks from this evening, you'll have a full draft warrant with all the warrant language in it for your review. And these are all the items I'm aware of at this time for the warrant.
Okay, Mike, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time for me to make this comment, or it's not really a comment, it's more of a request, but something that I'm going to ask. I want Mr. Germain to hear it, and I'll talk to I'll convey something to the select board, is that I understand the arguments or the advocacy that's being made for tree trimming in town. I support it, but not unconditionally, as well as road repair. And I ask that we look at one more item along with those, and that is sidewalks in this town. I'm going to ask that they put a sidewalk warrant article, or that they look at that as well. It's equally as important in the terms of the quality of life and the things that are safety aspects. I'm not sure why we would trim trees or develop or improve roads or maintain roads without looking at the sidewalks, because you see more people walking down Acorn Street or Village Street or any number of streets that either don't have a sidewalk or there's sidewalks in disrepair. And we've talked about trees over and over again for the last few years. And again, I applaud the advocacy. I just think we need some advocacy for sidewalks as well. There's a lot of dog walkers and kid walkers and stroller pushers and people that just want to get from point A to point B without taking a vehicle. And so I'd like to be an advocate for the sidewalks, and I'd like for the select board to do the same. Any questions or comments on warrant articles? And if you, Mike, I don't think you heard, but I'm not sure that you need to, but we're going to assign articles, even if it's in draft and even if it could change, we're going to assign articles to committee members likely next week, so that they get a chance to dig into the article, the department and issues upon the first presentation, and not necessarily having to go back to the person that may be making the presentation.
Oh, very good. I just with a caution that, some of the articles may disappear or alter in form somewhat, as long as the committee's aware of that, then that's perfectly fine.
Yep. We'll be flexible.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up on that? Anybody else feels sidewalks are important? Want to jump on the bandwagon?
Yeah, Pete, I actually, the first committee before the finance committee that I was on was the sidewalk committee. That's how I got to the finance committee.
Me too.
Yeah, there was a detailed plan that started at the school and radiated out. I haven't seen that plan in, I'm going to say 15 years, but I know there was a plan that was put together at one point that said the goal is to walk to the school compounds. They started working out Spring Street and going out that direction with sidewalk on at least one side of the street. So I know it's been something we've talked about forever, and never had the money to do. But I think we are coming into a point in our town's fiscal life cycle where we may have some money for but roads and sidewalk and tree trimming at some level. It used to be a roads or sidewalks or tree trimming, or let's just not cut the budgets. But at this point, we may be able to look at doing some of those things that are so important. So Mike, I don't know if you've looked in the deepest, darkest corners of the office. There was a binder that I've long since recycled that had a plan in it, but there was something. And I bet it hasn't changed dramatically if you still work with the idea that the idea is to start at the core of town and work your way out, or whatever the new plan might be. But that was an interesting committee, and it just, unfortunately, due to lack of funding, it never met. We met once a year, pretty much.
As speaking as the FinCom representative on the sidewalk committee, as well as the drinking water committee, I can tell you that I have never been to a meeting, and I am unaware of any other members on either committee. So it's an interesting question.
Mr. Chairman?
I would just, 1 second, Kathy, I would just say, thank you for your service, Doug. And I say that tongue in cheek, but I don't think it takes a committee for the town to invest in the sidewalks. I think, there's, as far as I know, that's not a road committee, but I know that Mr. McKay has a plan, has a documented plan, and he has certainly the expertise to deviate from that plan if necessary. We can invest 50,000 or 20,000 in sidewalks without a committee, and he can put a proposal together to spend whatever the amount is that the select board wants to add to kick that off. So hopefully Mr. Germain will carry this back. Sorry to do this to you. That was not the intent for inviting you here, but anyway.
Oh, how about I reach out to Mr. McKay and get some information on that and work on that a little bit.
Thank you. Kathy, go ahead.
Yes, Carol Johnson, are you still there? Well, anyway, there is a sidewalk fund.
Here, Kathy.
Okay, Carol, there is a sidewalk fund, and I wonder if at some point you could let the committee know how much is in that, because when I was on the planning board, a lot of developers came in, and if it was a subdivision, rather than requiring them to put sidewalks on either side of the road, they would do one side, and then they would, the town consultant would figure out how much the other side cost, and it was put into a fund. So there is money somewhere. So before everybody starts jumping to things, I think we should figure out how much money is in there. I hope it's still around. Thanks.
It's around, Kathy, and I will get you the amount for your next meeting. I probably could get it tonight, but I have to run out into the other room and look through the cabinet, and so I will get it for you next meeting.
Okay.
Carol, I'll pile onto that. I'll just tell you from personal knowledge, firsthand knowledge, I'm told that the funds that are diverted, or as Kathy describes, certainly not a good word, diverted, but as Kathy describes that process of taking two sidewalks down to one on the same street, those resources are used by the tree warden potentially to trim trees. I don't know if there are two funds, one for tree trimming of public shade trees and one to improve or maintain or create sidewalks. But Carol, if you wouldn't mind, just more than just the dollar figure that's in that fund, but could you give us kind of a little bit of information on how the fund's used, where does it show up in the budget? Just a little bit of background, that's all.
So as far as tree trimming, the tree trimming line is in the DPW Highway Department line. The articles that get voted, that have been voted for tree trimming in excess of the budget are in an article line, and only monies attributable to tree trimming are the monies expended for. So if the tree warden has taken down $50,000 worth of trees, they submit the bills, whether it's Stumpy's or someone else, and the bills get paid. once the funds are gone out of the article, they don't get replenished unless another article is voted. As far as the DPW, that money on his line item for tree trimming is put in every year. He does not have to, I mean, he spends it, but that would be under the direction of the DPW. The tree warden has that other 50,000. But as far as
I'll just tell
sidewalk,
you that I've been told differently. I don't want to, we need to belabor it here. Again, I'm told, as described more or less by Kathy, that the planning board, if they take funds out of a project or if they reduce the scope of a contractor's planned work, that those funds end up at the disposal of, you know, maybe it's the contractor or the developer that's doing the work. I don't think so. Under the auspices or supervision of the tree warden. Anyway, I'm going on and on more than I want
so I will get you that
on this particular
information.
subject.
Yeah, I'll get you the information we have. The
Thank
sidewalk
you.
fund does not have a huge amount of money in it. But we did look into that last year for the DPW director, and I will get you that information for next week.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on right now to a bit of an update on the policies and procedures draft index, and I'll ask Jody if she wouldn't mind. If she has more to speak to than just the index that's provided in our meeting materials, we can read that on our own. But Jody, would you like to add anything else?
Sure. So I sent out the draft document last week to Joyce and Sean, and we were set to meet yesterday, but then we lost a member. So Joyce very graciously had sent written comments to me and Sean prior to the meeting. So I incorporated I incorporated her comments and, you know, suggestions for edits to certain sections. So I do have a second draft of it and wanted to know if it would make sense to try to get a third member, or if you wanted to just work on it as a committee, or, you know, kind of what is the pace that you would like to go at with this?
So I would like to be aggressive with it, and I would like to get you a third committee member. And I would ask that if there are any volunteers, that they speak now. You know, have 7 of us step back and 1 person step forward, and that's the person. Or if there's a volunteer, I would definitely appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll have to send out the kind of the heavy enforcement to for pressure sale. Okay, none heard. I will we'll get you another committee member.
Okay.
Jody, I will endeavor to do that for
I will say
for
that
next week.
It's not terribly, you know, it shouldn't be too time intensive. It's 10 pages. It's divided by sections, which are the sections that we sent the kind of the table of contents. Those are the I'm not good with Roman numerals, but 16 sections, I believe. And so Joyce is very good at pointing out the sections that were too legalese. And so I have recrafted some of those, take out too many words. And, you know, so we should be able to work on it without too much difficulty.
To be honest with you, I think that Jody did a phenomenal job, and it was very well written, very well understood, except for a few things that she just mentioned that were a little too legally, sounded more like a lawyer's bluff or lawyer's puff, whatever. I don't know that we necessarily need a third person or a fourth person. I think maybe what we need is, because Jody has so nicely written it, maybe if the entire committee just reviewed it gave their input because it's really done so nicely. If there are any tweaking that needs to be done, I think as a committee, it might not be a bad idea for you all to just read it, send her and I or her the critiques or additions, and then put it in place.
Joyce, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna do exactly that. I'll make a decision on whether we're gonna put it out for review or whether we're gonna do a little bit more subcommittee work on it. So thank
Sure. I'll
you
send it
very
out to
much.
you.
I have no doubt that it's done well. So if you would, Jody,
Sure.
send that along.
Will do.
Okay. All right. Any comments, questions? Okay. Next item, do we have a thank you letter from the Oak Grove Farm Commission, I believe addressed to Select Board Finance Committee, Town Administrator, and the DPW Director. I'm just going to breeze through it really quickly. Oak Grove Farm Commission would like to take this opportunity to thank your financial assistance regarding the cleanup efforts after the tornado last year. As you know, there are multiple trees and many large branches down throughout Oak Grove, affecting many areas of the property that the public enjoys. We appreciate the willingness of the Select Board and Town Administrators to meet with us, review photos and damage and initial quotes, and recognize the ability to recover this was going to be more than the Oak Grove Farm Commission could do alone. Cooperation of all town entities allowed us for cleanup from the storm, but much quicker, and to give the Oak Grove property the ability to get to work, or the staff there to get to work restoring what was lost, and allow the residents to enjoy the property. So it's signed by the Oak Grove Farm Commission, and that's nice of them to do. Okay. Old business, new business. One thing that I just wanted to bring up, a couple things actually, was Mike, Mr. Gazinski, I would request that during our next meeting that we have an agenda item, and I'm just gonna, we can put anything we want on there, more or less. So I'm gonna put it on there. And that is an update on the CARES Act requests and funding. We asked for it during the tri-board meeting. I'd like to see just, some data on which projects were requested, how many of them have been, executed, or finance or funds expended, allocated, whatever financial term you want to use. I'd like to know, and I think it's a responsibility of the Finance Committee to be kept up to date on that and be knowledgeable of it. So if you would add that, and please prepare. And if next week's not enough time, fine, we can do it the following week. But just please be on notice that we're looking for that.
I do have it up on the dollars spent at the CARES Act for you. As of right now, we spent $499,000 with a balance of $230,000.
Okay,
So
well, let's talk specifics next week. Just give us a one page, here's the projects, here's what's done, here's what's remaining. That's all I need. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know Carol's been keeping close track of that, so we can certainly provide a breakdown of where we are at this point, and go over it with the committee.
Okay, thank you. Just a heads up. So I discussed with Deirdre and Mr. Kaczynski last week about future meetings. So next week on the schedule is Planning Board, Library, Fire, Police, and Emergency Management. Following week, 24th, it's going to be Rec, IT, Town Clerk, Assessor's Office, Finance, Veteran Services, and possibly some others that if we need to do backfill or other topics. And then the 31st would be CPC, which is the Capital Planning Committee, School, Town Council, Town Buildings, and the Select Board is who we're planning on hearing from. And then on the 7th of April would be Inspection Department and any makeups. And then we're tracking our final recommendations for the 14th. So obviously, that's why I want to make sure that we have a recommendation, or excuse me, our assignments at least notionally penciled in. And then we're on track to make sure that we have our final recommendations done for the 14th. Any questions or comments on that?
On other new business, Mr. Chair?
Please.
I understand that members are assigned liaisons. And is there a list as to who's what, where? I understand we lost Sean to the CPC, and I didn't know if every liaison who's supposed to be a liaison is assigned one.
Okay, I'll ask I'll ask Deirdre to pull that together, and we'll talk about it next week as an agenda item. And just for clarity, I think Sean was on the liaison to the Conservation Commission. I'm still liaison to the Capital Planning Committee. So
No, I'm talking about the
yep, I understand.
tax,
Sometimes
the tax one.
the tax
The
one,
Community preservation, that's also a
right?
CPC.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought
yeah,
he was
I
on
just-
that.
Yep, you're right. It's just sometimes the acronyms are they're obviously duplicate. So
Mr. Chair.
go ahead.
So this is one of the good uses for a policies and procedures manual, because it's there's actually a whole section that deals with that, because I had to actually do some research as to what are liaisons and representatives that should be out of the Finance Committee. So everyone can double check to make sure I got it right. Those of you who've been on the committee a lot longer than I have.
Okay, great. So we'll do that next week. We'll cover that and go through that. And that'll dovetail likely right into our discussion on policies and procedures. And moving on to minutes.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jody.
I move that we accept the minutes of March 3rd, our March 3rd meeting as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those against, nay. And any abstentions? Very good. Deirdre, you have all that?
I do.
Okay. And with that, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Night,
You too, Deirdre.
everybody.